Good morning. The June 26, 2024 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. As the board continues to meet in this hybrid fashion, we'll ask all folks who are joining us today in City Hall to ensure that your electronic devices are turned off or at a minimum placed on silent so you do not disrupt today's proceedings. And for those of you online, if you will have a chance to participate in today's discussion, we ask that when you unmute yourself that you speak loudly and clearly, state your name, the organization that you are calling from, and then begin with your testimony. Before I turn it over to our amazing clerk, I would like to acknowledge that Councilman Zeke Cohen is joining us here today in the back of the room. At this time, I would like to ask our clerk, Celeste Amato, for any corrections, additions, and noted abstentions to today's agenda.
Amazing.
Thank you for getting my title correct. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. President. We have the following changes to note this morning for the agenda. We have a correction to SB 2412000. This is an extension for contract 001568, maintenance and repair services for plumbing and heating for the Department of General Services. In the MBE participation section, please strike MBE goal percentage and MBE goal amount from Colt Installation, Inc., and insert WBE goal percentage and WBE goal amount. We have the following walk-on items for the agenda this morning. They are as follows. SB 2412279. This is for procurement. It's a renewal of contract 001834, Mitel Voice over Internet Protocol. Software maintenance and hardware support. This is being walked on at the request of the comptroller. And procurement will be speaking on this item this morning. The action reads as follows. The board is requested to approve the renewal of the equipment maintenance service contract with IPC Technologies, Inc. The amount of this transaction is $250,000. On June 16th, 2021, the board approved an initial award as shown in the contract summary that's available online. This is the first of 3 one-year renewal options. This renewal will provide software assurance, enterprise support, and licenses to expand infrastructure for teleworkers to service the Courthouse East, Courthouse West, State's Attorney's Office, Recreation and Parks, and Baltimore Police Department within the city's Voice over Internet Protocol network. There are 2 one-year renewal options remaining on this contract. We have a second walk-on this morning, SB 2412394. This is being walked on for the mayoralty. This is an agreement with Baltimore Office of Promotion and the Arts and the City of Baltimore. This is being walked on at the request of the mayor's office, and Ms. Tanya Miller will speak on this item this morning. The action requested reads as follows. The board is requested to approve an agreement with the Baltimore Office of Promotion and Arts to outline the relationship between the parties in relation to the provision of cultural and art-related services in the city of Baltimore. The transaction amount is $0. And we have a final walk-on this morning. This is a resolution, I believe technically submitted by Department of Public Works. Thank you. This is a second amendment to the resolution of the Board of Estimates of Baltimore City relating to cost escalation change orders due to adverse economic conditions. Because this is a resolution, please bear with me because I will need to read it into the record in its entirety. Thank you, Law Department, for the many, many whereas clauses. Whereas the Mayor and City Council of Baltimore, acting by and through the Board of Estimates pursuant to Article 6, Section 11A of the Charter of Baltimore City 2022 edition as amended, is responsible for awarding contracts and supervising all purchasing by the city. And whereas supply chain disruptions and high inflation as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the ongoing war in Ukraine, continue to significantly increase costs of labor, materials, supplies, and equipment for contractors. And whereas contractors on awarded city construction projects have requested change orders to reduce the adverse economic impact on their businesses from the supply chain disruptions and high inflation, and whereas the city contracts do not contain escalation clauses to address adverse economic conditions such as supply chain disruptions and high inflation, and whereas rebidding contracts, canceling projects, or pursuing legal actions against contractors that will not perform due to the adverse economic conditions may be detrimental to the city in comparison to negotiating change orders, and whereas the board does have broad discretion to approve change orders related to adverse economic conditions, And whereas by resolution adopted by the board on December 7th, 2022, the board created a process pursuant to which city agencies may request change orders due to adverse economic conditions for contracts awarded prior to July 1, 2022. And whereas the December resolution originally terminated on June 30, 2023, subject to extension of the term by the board, and whereas on June 21, 2023, the board amended the December resolution to provide that the December resolution termination date was amended to June 30, 2024, subject to extension of the term by the board. And whereas the December resolution as amended terminates on June 30, 2024, subject to extension of the term by the board. And whereas the need for the city to consider the impact of adverse economic conditions on city contracts continues and necessitates the extension of the effective term of the December resolution. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Estimates of Baltimore City that the December resolution is hereby amended as follows. Part A, delete Section 4, effective date, and replace with the following new Section 4. This resolution shall take effect upon the date of approval by the Board of Estimates and end June 30, 2024, unless further extended by the Board of Estimates. Any complete requests for change orders due to adverse economic conditions in parens cost escalation packages submitted to the city agencies and accepted by such city agencies for processing by June 30, 2024 will be allowed to be considered for approval. Part B, except as amended by the Second Amendment, the December resolution remains in full force and effect, and this document has been approved for form and legal sufficiency by the Law Department. It does not yet have an SB number. It will shortly after this meeting, but the board will be asked to consider and vote on it as part of the non-routine agenda. We have the following deferrals to note this morning. SB 24-12244, Baltimore Office of Planning, an unauthorized procurement to SB and Company LLC. Oh, sorry, this is Bureau of Procurement. Sorry, getting our acronyms crossed, I think. Unauthorized procurement to SB and Company LLC. This is deferred to 7/10 at the request of the comptroller. SB 24-12094, Department of Transportation. Extra work order number 6, TR 21018, urgent needs citywide. This has been deferred to 7/10 at the request of the comptroller. SB 24-12023, Department of Finance, Public School Property Transfer Agreement for Grove Park. Pre-K through 8 school building. This item is deferred to 7/24 at the request of the comptroller. SB 24-12031, Department of Finance, Public School Property Transfer Agreement for West Baltimore Middle School Building. This item is deferred to 7/24 at the request of the comptroller. SB 24-12027, Department of Finance, Public School Property Transfer Agreement for Lockerman Bundy Elementary School Building. This item is deferred to 7/24 at the request of the comptroller. SB 24-12018, Department of Finance, Public School Property Transfer Agreement for George W.F. McMeekin's Special Ed High School Building, deferred to 7/24 at the request of the comptroller. SB 24-12013, Department of Finance, Public School Property Transfer Agreement for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Pre-K to 8 School Building, deferred to 7/24 at the request of the comptroller. SB 24-12026, Department of Finance, Public School Property Transfer Agreement for Harriet Tubman School Building, deferred to 7/24 at the request of the comptroller. And SB 24-12030, Department of Finance, Public School Property Transfer Agreement for Sharp Leadenhall Special Ed Elementary School Building, deferred to 7/24 at the request of the comptroller. We have the following items being withdrawn from the agenda this morning. They are SB 24-11826, GS 18823, Project 1808, GYPE Associates Task 4, Star Spangled Banner Flag House HVAC Replacement Design, SB 24-12245, Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs, Termination Grant Agreement, Ahavas Chaim Inc., Developing Mental Health and Support Resources to help keep at-risk youth off the streets, and SB 24-12337 for procurement, an award select source for landscaping services for 14 water facility locations. We have the following protests and statements of opposition and/or statements of support to note this morning. SB 24-12198 for Department of Transportation, contract TR 24009, ADA curb ramp and sidewalk construction. A bid protest was received by J Villa Construction. Andrew H. Vance Esquire will appear remotely, Mr. President. SB 24-12096, Department of Transportation, TR 24008, ADA curb, ramp, and sidewalk construction, urgent need east. A protest has been received by Priority Construction. And protest was received also from Monumental Paving and Excavating related to water contracts 1409, 1252, and 1241R in connection with the resolution that was presented to the board this morning as a walk-on. Therefore, this protest has been withdrawn. The non-routine agenda is as follows. SB 24-12237, Department of Audit's Annual Comprehensive Finance Report. SB 24-11922, Department of General Services, Extra Work Order GS 18815. Lorton Stone, City Hall exterior stone repairs for $830,728.55. SB 24-12093, Department of General Services, bid rejection for GS 16810RRR, Mitchell Courthouse roof replacement, $0. SB 24-12195 for the Law Department, Faye Copman et al. Versus Baltimore City Police Department. At the U.S. District Court, case number 1:21CV00837 for $40,000. SB 24-11774 for the Law Department, settlement agreement. Kimberly Pinder as parent and next friend of student Doe versus Sarah Dixon and the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners for $175,000. SB 24-12394, mayoralty. This is an agreement between BOPA and the City of Baltimore. This was a walk-on at the request of the mayor's office. SB 24-12279 for procurement. This is a renewal of contract 001834, Mitel Voice over Internet Protocol. This was a walk-on at the request of the Comptroller's Office. SB 24-12278 for procurement. This is an award for RFQ 000526, utility services for Baltimore City Convention Center for $0. And SB 24-12198, Department of Transportation, TR 24009, ADA curb, ramp, and sidewalk construction for $3,552,958. A bid protest was received, again, by J. Villa Construction. And SB 24-12096, Department of Transportation, TR 24008, ADA curb, ramp, and sidewalk construction, urgent need east. Again, a protest was received by Jonathan Heron on behalf of Priority Construction. And the 11th non-routine today would be for the resolution, Mr. President. I have the following abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott is abstaining on SB 24-12016, First Amendment, Johns Hopkins University COVID Health Disparities Preparedness. SB 24-11823, Agreement with Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, Care, Ware Administration, Ryan White Part A. SB 24-10217, Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. SB 24-10254, Johns Hopkins University. SB 24-10722, Ratification for Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, Tuberculosis Elimination. The Honorable President Nick Mosby has no abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Comptroller Bill Henry is abstaining on all travel requests and travel reimbursements. City Solicitor Ebony Thompson has no abstentions this morning. And the Director of Public Works, Khalil Zaid, has one abstention to note this morning. Two. SB 24-12225, retroactive travel request for LaToya Curtis. And SB 24-12071, employee travel request for LaToya Curtis. We also have some no votes to note this morning for items appearing on the routine agenda. The Honorable President Nick Mosby is voting no on the following items. SB 24-11924, Impact Investment Area Neighborhood Revitalization Fund, ARPA Award. SB 24-12058, Let's Thrive Baltimore, ARPA FY24. SB 24-12108, Award, GS 24807, Engine Company 45 Roof Replacement for Cole Roofing, Inc. SB 24-12116, Award for GS 24806, Baltimore City Fire Department Hazmat Station Roof Replacement for Cole Roofing, Inc. SB 24-121 7.5, First Amendment to the Interagency Agreement between Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs and Baltimore City Rec and Parks for ARPA Grant 442213. SB 2412097, MOU and Right of Entry Agreement with CGH Limited Partnership for Community Affordable Internet Access and Expansion. SB 2412058, Let's Thrive Baltimore, Inc., ARPA FY24. SB 2412373, Account Correction. SB 2411356, Emergency Procurement Request for 001547 Team Service Corporation, and SB 2412143, Third Amendment to the Professional Services Consultant Agreement with the University of Baltimore. And, Mr. President, that concludes our opening statement for this morning.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. And what we're going to do is take up the resolution related to the cost escalation change orders as the 11th non-routine item. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're just reading the resolution in as part of the opening statement, but if there's anyone who would like to participate in the discussion around, again, the cost escalation change order decision, we will allow that during our routine. At this time, I'll ask the board for a motion to approve the opening statement.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The open statement has now been adopted. I now would like to direct the board's attention to a memorandum dated from my office on June the 24th, 2024, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items together with any corrections, additions, abstentions, and no votes that have been read by our amazing clerk. I will entertain a motion at this time to approve all items contained in the routine agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The opening statement has been adopted. The first item on our non-routine agenda today can be found on page 4, SB 2412237, Department of Audits. This request is to note the annual comprehensive financial report for the city of Baltimore. On behalf of the city, we have our amazing chief auditor, Mr. Josh Pass. You're going to bring up.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Deputy, Mr. Comptroller, board members. My name is Josh Pash, and we are here to present the fiscal 23 annual comprehensive financial report for Baltimore City. On this audit, we work with SB & Company, and they will be presenting to you today.
Thank you, Mr. Auditor. The third party.
Thank you, Josh. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tiana Nguyen. Greetings to the members of the Board of Estimates. SB & Company serves as your independent public accountant, and our scope of services, if I were to start on page 3 of our presentation, our scope of services include the review of the annual comprehensive financial report, which has a date of June 30, 2023. Included within that report is the City of Baltimore, 3 utility funds, water, wastewater, and stormwater, as well as the parking facilities fund. SB & Company is also engaged to perform your audit in accordance with Uniform Grant Guidance. That audit is the audit for your federal funding that's due back to the Federal Clearinghouse. So as a result, we also assist in the preparation of the data collection form. Our reports will include reports on internal controls over financial reporting, as well as throughout the year, we provide observations and recommendations to management and the various departments across the city of Baltimore. I do want to note that there are certain sections that fall under the city of Baltimore that are not audited by us. However, they are audited by other independent public accounting firms, and we place reliance on those auditors. Those are listed at the bottom of page 3, the pension trust funds, the ERS, the elected officials retirement system, fire and police retirement system, as well as the Baltimore City Public School System. I won't spend a lot of time on page 5. It's a depiction of our audit approach. What I would leave you with is that SB & Company implements and follows a risk-based audit approach in accordance with the AICPA standards. On page 6, one of the first areas of our audit approach is to evaluate and gain an understanding of the overall internal control environment. We use a 5-area model known as the COSO model that has 5 interrelated parts to assist us in understanding the business environment, the various processes and decisions that are ultimately made across the city. On page 7, you'll be able to see those 5 interrelated components of the internal control model that's used. It first starts with the tone at the top of the organization, looking at various policies and procedures that are in place, tools that are in the city to assess risk, the underlying control activities, how it is that information is communicated not only within the city, but externally as well. And then the last area of that model looks at the monitoring process. Here, we look at the periodic evaluations that occur, as well as the tools and how it is that deficiencies are remediated, that internal audit function, and overall compliance. Picking up on page 8, you're able to go from those 5 areas and further dissect the various processes. And each of these, I pointed out that risk model in the beginning. Each of these are a result of the risk profile that we've set in the various assessments. I won't go through each of these in detail, but you'll be able to see on pages 8 and 9 the various processes and key areas that we've assessed throughout the audit. If we pick up on page 11, here is a summary of the annual comprehensive financial report. You might hear people also referring to it as the ACFR. We've included here the various sections of the ACFR and the responsibility that the auditor has taken over those sections. I will note that each of these responsibilities are in accordance with the standards. So, management takes full responsibility for the introductory section as well as the statistical section. In the body of the report, SB & Company provides an opinion. We review the management's discussion and analysis for consistency. We do provide opinions on the various statements themselves, so the government-wide, the component units, as well as the various funds. We also review the notes for consistency, as well as the required supplemental information. On page 12, I've listed here the summary of our results. So SB & Company did issue a clean or unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That opinion states that the financial statements as presented by management are materially correct and presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We did not discover any instances of fraud. Also want to note that we see full cooperation from management as well as the various leadership teams at the various departments across the city. We did identify certain material weaknesses and significant deficiencies within the internal control environment. Those are listed out on pages 14 and 15 of the report. We also provide recommendations for improvements to the overall internal control environment, as well as certain policies and procedures. Page 13 is a summary or a description of the varying degrees of deficiencies that can be rendered. A deficiency in internal controls, that is simply a deficiency that exists when the operation of a control does not allow management in the normal course of their duties to prevent, detect, or correct misstatements from happening on a timely basis. A material weakness is a combination of deficiencies in the internal control environment where there's a reasonable possibility that material misstatements could occur and would not be prevented or detected or corrected. The level that's in the middle is known as a significant deficiency. And here, this is a deficiency that is less severe than a material weakness, but important enough to merit attention to those charged with governance. On pages 14 and 15 is a summary of the 6 material weaknesses that were identified as a result of our audit. There was the financial reporting function that relates to the number of post-close adjustments that were necessary in order to ensure that the financial statements were materially stated. There continues to be a deficiency as it relates to grant accounting, as well as the ability to prepare the schedule of federal awards, which is the reporting on your grant expenditures back to the federal government. There continues to be inconsistencies with the billing as it relates to water and wastewater. Additionally, as a part of our 2023 audit, it came to our attention that there were certain capitalizable costs that were erroneously recorded as operating expenses, and those needed to be adjusted as a result of the post-close process. Within fixed assets, we continue to have recommendations around the correcting of capitalized assets, as well as ensuring the appropriate depreciation expenses recorded. In the IT environment, there have been certain improvements from the prior year, but there are some high-risk areas that continue to need to be remediated. We have communicated those specific IT results and matters to BSIT in a private setting. SB & Company would be happy to discuss any of those items in a more private setting or anything to address the concerns, but given the nature, we will not go into detail around those concerns. Page 17 goes to begin to talk about the summary of the uniform guidance. We've included some information in here to better describe or to add some color to the goals of the uniform guidance audits. One, mainly being this process of streamlining the administrative burden. So instead of having various auditors come in from the various houses within the federal government, you're allowed to have one audit performed by one auditor to come in to ensure that recipients of federal funds have processes and tools in place to reduce the risk of waste, fraud, and abuse around federal funding. Page 18 highlights some of the compliance areas that are looked at. So we spend time looking at the allowable costs and activities, periods of performance, cash management, reporting, matching, eligibility, and subrecipient monitoring. On page 19, as I mentioned, the uniform grant guidance for the year ended June 30, 2023 is still in process. So we've listed here the status of the 23 audit as well as the results that occurred for fiscal year 2022. On page 20, you'll be able to see the summary of the major programs that were selected in 2023 based on the compliance supplement issued by Uniform Guidance. At the conclusion of the 2023 audit, I believe SB & Company will come back before the board to report out on the results of that audit. On page 21, again, just to be able to put your federal funding in context, we've included here the federal expenditure actual dollars for fiscal year 22. The required coverage based on your risk status is 40%, and based on the testing in 22, we achieved 62% testing coverage of your federal funds, and we are expecting a similar coverage percentage in 2023. Moving to slide 22, our overall recommendation for the city is to continue to establish policies and procedures to ensure that federal funds are properly identified and reported accurately, as well as ensuring that the individuals that are responsible for administering your federal programs are receiving adequate training and grants administration, including the specific uniform grant guidance requirements. Those requirements do tend to change often, so you want to make sure that those individuals are up to date on the knowledge that's needed, whether it's reporting, subrecipient monitoring, eligibility, et cetera. If I go into the last part of the communication, this is really our required communication to those charged with governance. Here is where I would let you know that the financial statements were the responsibility of management. SB & Company's responsibility was to review those financial statements, take a look at the policies and procedures, the policies and principles adopted by management, and here we represent to you that those accounting policies are acceptable in accordance with U.S. GAAP. There were audit adjustments that were included, but what's important to note is there were no audit adjustments that were proposed by SB & Company that management did not include within the financial statements. All adjustments proposed either by management or SB & Company were accepted and included in the audited financial statements. And as I mentioned, we did not identify any instances of fraud or illegal acts. We didn't have any serious difficulties or major issues getting through the audit. We aren't aware of what's known as opinion shopping, where we provided an opinion and management consulted with other accountants to receive a different opinion. It's also my responsibility to communicate to you that annually, SB and Company goes through a process to ensure that we are independent of our clients, and I represent to you that we are independent of the city of Baltimore. We do provide certain assistance from the city auditors to get through some of the audit areas and procedures. So I do want to thank the city auditor for the time and talent that he dedicates to SB and Company. And I'll stop there and see if there are any questions. Our information is also included in the packet, and you should know that you always have direct access to SB and Company anytime you need.
Thank you so much. Not sure if you're prepared to talk to the board today about this, but how do some of the material weaknesses compare to material weaknesses that have been discovered in past annual audits?
So the material weaknesses that were identified in 2023 are a carryover and continuation from 2022. There have been no new identified weaknesses as it relates to those that have been labeled as material.
So in other words, ultimately, those material weaknesses have not been improved upon with your evaluation of the latest audit?
There were certain improvements that were made with some of these, like as an example, information technology. It takes time, for management to be able to move the needle. But the material weaknesses do still exist, and there are some varying degrees of changes that have occurred from 2022, but none that have allowed us to take them completely off the table.
So what I'm hearing is, from a material weakness perspective, how there might be some incremental improvements that they still remain consistent with the previous audit because of the level of severity.
Yes.
At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns? Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. If you could go back to page 4. No, this is for you. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, no. Sorry. If you could go back to page 14 on your presentation.
Yes.
There was a section that read, for example, there were cash accounts that were not reconciled for the majority of the fiscal year, which resulted in approximately $50 million of uninvestigated reconciling items. Additionally, upon review of the trust accounts, an account for $92 million was identified but had not been recorded as of year end. Can you talk a little bit more about that section?
Yes, I can. First section, as it relates to the $50 million of uninvestigated reconciling items, we were notified during the close process, during management's close process. I think this led to one of the delays of the audit, that there were certain accounts that had not been reconciled during the year. As a result, so in fiscal year 23, as a result, one of the things that management first had to correct in order to provide final numbers to be audited was there were $50 million of transactions that had not yet been recorded or reconciled through through what would have been the monthly cash reconciliation process. And so this is an area that management was aware of when at the end of June 30, 2023, and it took some time post 2023, so into fiscal year 24, for management to review those $50 million of transactions and determine the appropriate recordation of those into the books.
And did you review the process that led to that?
Yes.
And had you already provided the Finance Department with recommendations for how to address that?
So the recommendation that we would have had on addressing this would be ensuring monthly cash reconciliations are performed and that they're performed timely. So if you're completing those reconciliations timely, you wouldn't have this backlog of items that could be carrying forward, let's say from October, November, December, all the way to June 30. You would be clearing them at the time that they were occurring and not having to do such a massive look back into the previous fiscal year.
So they had to clear the backlog in order to provide this.
Yes.
But that was now several months ago.
Mm-hmm.
If they did not start doing the monthly reconciliation in a timely fashion, that backlog has already started to build again for next year.
Correct.
Correct, okay. And the council president touched on this a little bit, but I just want to be a little bit more explicit. how many years in a row has SB and Company found material weaknesses in our internal controls?
I would need to get back to you on that, because I'm not sure the exact number of years, and so I
But
don't want to misspeak.
Let me ask you, how many years do you know of off the top of your head?
At least three.
At
for
least
for
three.
me.
Okay. And, well, we'll ask the same question, but I would appreciate if you could get back to us
will.
also with the specifics. How many years in a row have you found significant deficiencies in our internal controls?
I would need to get back
Okay,
to
we
you.
can get back at that. And this, I think we touched a little bit on page 16 about this with, oh, no, I'm sorry, 15. Yeah, where the schedule of federal awards. Can you talk a little bit about the delay in finalizing the single audit?
Yes. The initiation of the single audit for SB and Company or for any independent public accounting firm would start once management provides the draft schedule of federal awards. That schedule includes all federal expenditures across all of your departments within the city that have received federal dollars. When that draft was provided to us, it was provided to us in April of 2024. And I will note that the single audit was due to the Federal Clearinghouse on March 31st. In receiving that initial draft of the schedule of federal awards, some of the issues that we discovered related to the accounting for subrecipients. So where there were departments that either received subrecipients and didn't report them, or departments that transferred funds to other departments within the city and erroneously presented them as subrecipients. There was also issues around the accounting for subcontractors, very similar to subrecipients. The identification of beneficiaries is something that is needed in looking at the eligibility compliance attribute. There are different ways that the data needs to be dissected in order to ensure that it's appropriately tested based on the type of cost. And we found that many of those costs were not separately tracked and could not be easily identified within the city's general ledger.
The draft schedule that you received in April, when would SB and Company have needed that draft schedule in order to provide the single audit on time?
I think ideally a good schedule of federal awards would be prepared in connection with the close process. So maybe in that September, October timeframe of the previous fall.
Okay, 9/10 of '23. And if memory serves, we were late with the single audit last year also.
Correct.
Do you remember off the top of your head when you got the draft schedule last year?
I do not.
But was about the same
Probably-
time in the spring?
Probably about the same time in the spring, somewhere between January to March.
And last year, did SB and Company make recommendations on how the finance department could provide the schedule in a timely fashion?
Yes.
But those recommendations were apparently not followed?
That's possible, yes.
Okay, all right. And that is all the questions I have for SB and Company, although I still have some for finance. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any additional questions for SB and Company? Thank you so much for your presentation today. Mr. CFO, I think you would like to address the board.
Thank you so much, and good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, members of the board. My name is Michael Moxton, a Baltimore City CFO. I'd just like to start by thanking the auditor and his team, as always, for their collaborative approach in the creation of this report, as well as SB and Company for lending their expertise. Several years ago, City of Baltimore simply lacked the integrated systems that are needed to fully implement modern internal accounting controls. The work that's been done over the last 3 years to modernize both our systems and the way we do business has brought us significantly closer to best financial practices. This audit lays out the work that's still ahead of us. And when there is a finding, there's a very high bar to clear that finding, as there should be. And we will continue to work through these recommendations. But this audit also includes an important acknowledgement of the path that's behind us and the progress that's been made to date. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Deputy Director Ioana Moisides, as well as our new Acting Chief of Accounting and Payroll Services, Victoria Raby, to walk through the details.
Good morning, President Mosby, Mayor Scott, Solicitor, Comptroller, honorable members of the board. My name is Ioana Moisides, Deputy Director of Finance, and I'm joined by Acting Chief Raby. We would like, I know there are a number of questions. We do have a presentation that goes finding by finding. We might find that helpful to do that and then chime in with questions if the board is okay with that.
No, it's perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So very high level, just to highlight a few things. It was, as the auditors mentioned, a modified opinion, no instances of material fraud. We did fully cooperate. We had the incredible support, as always, of the Department of Audits. There were material weaknesses and significant deficiencies, and as noted, these have been continuing. So we want to talk about what we've put in place and the changes that have been made. And just highlighting, as the auditors noted, as Director Moxton noted, and as we'll talk about, this is a continuing process. So once you have that finding, that standard for removing it is heightened, and it requires a great deal of work and effort and commitment. Thankfully, we have the support of the administration, the daily work of the CAO, and our partners at audits, and with our external auditors. And so with that, we'll jump to the next slide, and we'll begin to talk about the findings. And so the first finding was in the financial reporting function. I'll turn it over to Chief Raby. There are a number of detailed things that we did. I'll say overarching, yes, we had the Workday implementation. And for the first time, we have all of the pieces of information that are critical to our financial accounting in one system. So we have that procurement information. We have the grants information. We have the accounting system. They all are one system with one set of identifiers and shared information, and all real time.
And I will just good morning, Victoria Raby. What I will just add before going into the details is the global, as you said, where we were and where we are today. So prior to FY23, so again, to highlight, FY23 was the first accounting year in Workday. So we went from a system where we could not produce our financial statements. So the old system was referred to as Dynamics, where we could not produce the ACFR. We couldn't do that from that system, where we have now moved to Workday, where we have clear transparency, where we have active participation from agencies across the city, and we have taken that giant leap forward into the new system, into producing accurate financial reporting. Now, with that transition, there are obviously learning curves, bumps, and you see that in where we do still have some manual adjustments that were required. Some were identified internally by management, some were identified by SB & Company. But as has been shared, we now have the system in place to be able to produce what we hope are results without findings on financial reporting, but we do anticipate that this will be a step down. So hope to see a step down from a material weakness to a significant deficiency, and to, in the near term for the city, see this finding completely resolve. Happy to go through the particular statements here. I think we have covered them, but the big takeaway is we now have a modern system in place that actually allows for us to have accuracy. The other item that we have done is we've reviewed the accounting team and are aiming to have cross-training, and because some of these issues are human error, and the best way that we can prevent those is to ensure we have the checks and balances and additional eyes in place. Are there questions on the finding and statement on financial reporting? The other item that was asked about was specifically the bank reconciliation, which we are moving forward and aim to have reconciled with the close of FY24.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So the next items that were presented were findings that go hand in hand on grant accounting, which then flows into the Schedule of Federal Awards, or the CFA. And if you'd like to go high level first, and we'll share some important improvements.
Sure, so high level, again, we have the system that has the fields necessary to capture the data we need, right? We can see all spending charged to a grant through that grant work tag. We can see the award beginning end date. We can see the amount. We have features now that can show us the reporting schedule and timeline for reporting. And so that structure is in place, and that's why you'll see on many of these, track the grant performance period, complete, calculate automated billing, in progress. You'll see define the grant funding source award, complete. Populated fields in Workday to show a pass-through award, complete. What's the piece that still needs to happen then, right? That's the important question. And that goes to the structures that we have set up. So we now have the Grants Management Committee, right? That's led by the Office of Performance Innovation, the CAO, Grants Management, and BAPS. And that's a monthly meeting with all grant-funded agencies where they're meeting to do a couple of things. One, monitor and track compliance. Two, frankly, a cross-sharing of information on what the standards are. You heard the auditor talk about uniform guidance, ensuring that all of our agencies are aware of updates to that. Ensuring that we have the reporting and the flexibility that they need in the system so that we're able to do system improvements where they identify a need. That's one piece, but there's another piece, and I think the director referenced it, and if he didn't this particular time, he's referenced before, a staffing review. Right, so we had the Grants Management Office. It was a very small but mighty office, and their charge was very narrow. We looked at that and decided that we needed citywide to expand the scope of what that office is responsible for, so that instead of focusing on primarily policy, moving to compliance and review, moving to regular. I'm not going to say auditing, that's an official term, but regular review and monitoring of agency performance on reporting, on drawdowns, et cetera. And in line with that, the Grants Management Office has received additional staffing, and so we are looking at bringing a director on board. Interviews are ongoing. We're very excited about that. And similar to some of the work we've done with procurement transformation, looking at a model where we have leadership coming in that we can develop that plan more broadly and then identify as we go along what are the important areas to staff. We didn't want to arbitrarily staff without developing that plan first. In addition, what we've started within the past few months is a collaboration between the Grants Management Office, GMO, and with the participation of BBMR to develop trainings around grants. So these are bi-weekly trainings. We have had incredible attendance. Between 50 to 70 citywide staff grants employees have been at those trainings and engaged on very critical pieces: grant setup, grants billing, new grant functionality. In fact, you'll see that one of the ones I'm particularly excited about was the most recent one, where we looked at the functionality that will allow us to track reporting and allow agencies to set that up. And the details of this, I'm kind of excited to share, are important because it shows our process for change. Right? The most important thing from these findings is what are we doing to get from point A to point B? What are we doing to get from material to significant to no findings? And that's a very concrete example, right? So we identified we need to track reporting. Our GMO and BAPS team went back and examined the functionality and looked at what are the pieces we can do to make this work within the system. They identified the functionality that would work. We had the initial citywide training. We've asked agencies to use it so that we can get feedback on what needs to be tweaked with it and what our specific guidance should be. And then that will be implemented as mandatory guidance to the agencies on how to use that functionality. That's a very detailed example, but it gives you an idea of the work that's needed to address these findings and why it is not an overnight next fiscal year immediate change. Went a little off script with that, but
And the only thing that I would just echo on that implementation year, right, FY23 being that transition as it relates to the CFA and grant reporting, is we went from an environment where it was 100% manual. There was no database, there was no information, to now we, in 23, produced 80 to 90% of the CFA directly from Workday information. Now, during that transition, we learned some information about, input errors and things of that, and we've refined the processes to ensure that there are multiple eyes. And we're, accounting nerd for a moment, we're actually really excited for 24 to be able to produce the CFA timely and accurately out of one system that has the link to all of the accounting transactions. So we're excited for the future. Questions as it relates to the CFA or grant reporting?
Mr. Comptroller?
Oh, okay, I wasn't sure if the mayor was.
He wants to do it at the end.
Okay, now, that was a lot. Okay, I appreciate it, and I want to say on behalf of the Comptroller's office, you won't find anyone else who'll be happier if the Grants Management Office actually manages the grants in a way that does not result in the city chronically having to approve grants that have already been concluded by the time they get to the Board of Estimates to be approved. But specifically, taking that 80 to 90% of the information that you needed for the draft CFA was in Workday, why did it take from the close of fiscal 23 until April of 24 to actually produce it?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a great question. So there's a bit of an order of operations. So before we can prepare the CFA, we need to ensure that the financial numbers are finalized or nearly finalized. So we need to accomplish the ACFR first. Because if you're preparing the ACFR and you determine that there are material adjustments and they may be grant related, you're preparing the CFA, then you kind of have this domino effect. So the timeline in an implementation year was just a little longer. So where we would be producing and closing the books in September, October, as the auditors referenced, since this was a new year, new system, developing that process was occurring January, February. So then the CFA followed after that.
I'm not sure that it's consistent with what SB and Company was saying, because they were saying that they would normally expect a draft CFA in September or October, and it seems unlikely that we would have an ACFR completed by September.
So my understanding of the historical timeline, and I will apologize,
Yeah,
being relatively,
I get that this is not
Yeah.
your history.
is that most of the single audit work, which originates from the CFA, has historically really started in earnest after the CFA the ACFR is complete. So we aim to finish the ACFR in December, January, then dive into the single audit to meet the March 31st.
I get that, but as coming into this and repeating what you've been told, my concern would be that you're taking as expected what has been not best practice.
So, yes, and
Okay.
what is the ultimate goal and the compliance requirement is that we submit to the audit clearinghouse the single audit by March 31st. So,
Which is hard if you're submitting the draft to your auditor in April.
Absolutely, most certainly. But we don't anticipate that timeline to reoccur. So, for example, as we go into close FY24, we are aiming for that timeline that is working quickly through the ACFR, providing a reliable draft CFA in late fall, so that the auditors have sufficient time to conduct the single audit. to be able to have the single audit.
That was what I was looking
Yeah.
for, is so you're confident that this year you will be able to provide SB and Company with a draft CFA this fall?
Yes, much earlier.
Okay, okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a follow-up. Can you go a little bit more into detail about how the grants module and Workday will help with all of this and the issues that you guys have seen in with the preparing of the schedule for the federal awards?
So one of the leaps forward is all of the information is contained within Workday. So for grants, that includes who is the federal sponsor, who is the state sponsor, if it's federal programming, what's referred to as the assistance listing number, which is how we prepare the CFA, formerly called the CFDA number, period of performance, all of that information, subrecipient information, detail, all of those details that used to have to be manually aggregated from the various agencies who are holding on to that information now lives within Workday. It is all transparent there, integrated with the accounting transactions. So in an ideal place, which we hope to be in '24, we can produce the CFA via an automated report, as opposed to a manual process. And I will pause for a moment if there's any additional piggyback in our response.
I think you covered it, and just to note, we did have a smoother process. As Chief Raby noted, we were able to prepare more of it from what was in Workday. Where we saw the pain points were either user error, a misunderstanding of CFA and what needed to be in it. So we did, in anticipation of that, for the first time earlier this year, do a citywide CFA training, but that will be repeated, and we'll probably add some different components to that based on what we learned from this year's preparation. And to really give credit to Acting Chief Raby, who jumped in. She joined us on board in April, and we very shortly after that transitioned our former chief, who was outstanding. And so that period of transition was also a pain point, but one of the things that's been outstanding thus far is Acting Chief Raby most common question, which is why? And that has been incredibly helpful.
Yes.
It's identified areas for staff training. It's identified process improvement. So based on having a new system and new internal controls, we've identified several areas where the task actually doesn't need to be done by accounting, because we now have a system in place that can provide those protections that were originally intended. So all of those pieces come together to really move us to the point where I think we can confidently say the CFA will be prepared earlier, it will be more accurate, and we look forward to continuing to make progress on these findings.
As a frequent user of that question, I applaud you, and I encourage you to keep using it.
Thank you for that, Madam Deputy Director. Can you talk about any other policies that you guys are putting in place to make sure that, because it's great to have the information, but if it's not put in timely, it doesn't matter?
So yes, so one of the things that we're doing is looking very closely at the process. So one of the things we identified as we were looking at agency billing was that there were errors in the setup process. They were very minor errors, but they were causing processes later down the line in terms of grants to not move as smoothly. So we've actually when I say begun to, we are in the testing phase of adding grants management to the Create Award process. So they will be the final check and balance to review the setup. It's changes like that that we've put in place as we've identified these errors that I think will lead to real measurable results for the city.
My other questions are for the next, they haven't gotten to it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You guys can continue with the material weaknesses.
I believe we will.
So for water and wastewater, there are a series of corrective actions that DPW highlighted in relation to their continued progress in resolving this finding. We do have I believe Aaron Moore from DPW present, and he can answer any detailed questions. But it's important to note that there was a review of unbilled properties that have no accounts established. The city and county also undertook a joint review of the entire water and wastewater utility. DPW has optimized water billing cycles and schedules through a software program, and city customers are billed monthly. They have a process for establishing a billing case, and when that case is established, they are now able to do adjustments in a timely manner. They're actually working to automate the adjustment process via the billing system. And in line with that, the UMAX update went live on June 17th. That billing system upgrade does provide some additional capability. They did have attributed costs, and they'll note, again, I'm not an accountant, so I'll give my best description, that there were a series of costs that they originally allocated in one bucket and identified that those costs were compliance-related and more suited to capitalize the costs because the costs were essentially a consent decree project. And then they did provide some updates as of May 2024, in that they've billed 99.25% of accounts, including 99.5% of residential accounts. Those residential accounts make up 87% of all accounts. And that meter reads via the AMI, AMR technology allow for consistent billing.
Questions on that topic?
No, Mr. Comptroller?
I'm sorry, I was consulting with the director of DPW because
The true expert.
My recollection is that with the number of total accounts, even having what sounds like a good number of 99.25% still leaves several thousand unresolved, unbilled. And I'm just curious whether, I've always been hesitant to use the term Six Sigma in this room because it involves an expectation of near perfection that often seems outside the reach of government efficiency. But that's what we need to be doing in order to actually serving all of our customers. When we have hundreds of thousands of customers, we need to get it right every time, and we need to get all of these accounts dealt with. So that was, we were consulting over exactly how many accounts there are to try to figure out what 0.75% of them actually means, but.
Less than 2,000.
Yeah, okay. That was where we were coming up with.
Mostly due to vacants.
Okay.
Mr. Comptroller? I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor?
I just want to thank you, Mr. Comptroller and Mr. Director, for you guys on the spot math. Thank you very much. I just wanted for us to walk through how the new system will actually help us with this. And Aaron, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but where we were before we got to 99.25%. What was the rate before that?
Sure, absolutely. Good morning, Honorable Board. Thank you. It's good to be back.
Be careful.
Very good morning there, actually. But no, it's exciting to be back. And as you mentioned, we were not at that particular level in the past. Now, that doesn't mean that we were far off from, best practices and industry standard, which I believe is about 98 to 99% in that range for utilities. So we weren't too far below that. However, great leaps and bounds, particularly due to the technology that we have through the AMI, AMR. So those reads come in electronically. And in addition to that, we have an entirely new upgraded system as well. So it'll allow for a lot more functionality for our customers as well, too. So if you're a Baltimore City resident, please log in and sign up. And if you'd like paperless bills as well, too, please choose that option.
Thank you. I am signed up for paperless bills, so I try to sign up for paperless everything. Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the team at Finance. I think, Mr. Comptroller, Mr. President, we know how important this systems change process is, and we appreciate friends at SB and Company as well. But we, as administration, are really committed to putting these things in place. As you noted, Mr. Comptroller, these are things that have been issues for years in the city, and we know that not having modern systems will allow those things to fester for many years. And now that we have those systems and a focus on using technology and those modern systems to build the infrastructure, but also to address now the human element so that we are not seeing these findings continuing in the future. And we look forward to seeing that happen. Thank you.
Mr. Comptroller?
I just had one last question, and it's probably for the director, might be for you. It's not for you. You're good.
I wasn't.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
bad timing.
Which was, why was the ACFR published on the Finance Department's website back on April 12th with a letter addressed to the Board of Estimates as if it had been presented to the board, but it wasn't actually sent to the board until our office requested it, which is why we're having this meeting today in June?
So I can double check historically what used to happen. As noted, our former chief of accounting left, so I will acknowledge that there were just little bits and pieces of who sends what, where, when that we identified as a gap, and now have a written timeline to address that. Additionally, there is a slight process change from prior years in that historically we would complete the ACFR, then complete the single audit, and then present as a package to the Board of Estimates. I will acknowledge I'm not certain of the dates that were on any of those letters, but our intent was to do as we had historically done, which was present both. And then when we were asked, of course, we are happy to present, and we anticipate, ideally, the board will be amenable to coming back for recognition of the single audit and further discussion of where we're at.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
It can.
It can.
Great answer.
Are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board?
No, sir.
Hearing and seeing none, thank you so much to SB and Company, as well as to the Finance Department, as well as DPW. This audit will be noted. The next item on our routine agenda can be found on pages 47 and 48, SB 2411922, Department of General Services. This request is to approve extra work order number 31 with Lorton Stone LLC for GS 18815 City Hall exterior wall repairs. On behalf of DGS, we have
Chris Epler, Deputy Division Chief, Capital Projects. So I'll start by just explaining the change, and then I'll be happy to field any other questions. So this change represents Phase 11 in a structured process that we're going through on this job, so we can address sections one at a time on a micro level, just due to the age of the building. So this just represents another phase in the project. I'll be happy to field any questions.
And just for
May I add one thing?
Mr.
Good
Chief,
morning,
of course.
honorable members of the board. Baraki Atila, Director, Department of General Services. So there are two types of change orders in the procurement world. As you know, our capital projects, we cannot award the entirety of the project unless we have the full funding of this. Because of the nature of this project being so large and so expensive, we wouldn't be able to put all of the funding in our limited capital budget in 1 year. Ergo, the phases. So every time the new phase comes in, each new year of the capital budget, CIP 6 years, we add new funding for this. That's why it is called a change order, but it is not the same type of change order that we thought that this project was going to be X, but this is now X plus 10%. That's why we're coming to you for the change order. This is really the activation of the phases that Chris mentioned, about 11 phases. And I believe we are in the total part of the project, we're not only ahead of schedule about maybe 5 years, but also the total cost of the project will end up saving us about $1.5 million from the total cost. But it is basically a limiting factor of our capital budget size. If we were to award this project in an entirety at once, we wouldn't have to be able to do anything for any of the other years. So that's the nuance that I wanted to add. I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
no.
Thank you, Mr. Director, Mr. Deputy Director. One quick question. When do we expect it to complete? I know you said it's ahead of schedule.
I'm gonna.
All right. So this represents the first of last 3 phases. So I'll have 2 more after this.
Yeah.
Which we're going to be in the front of the building, so I appreciate everybody bearing with us. It is loud, so thank you. If things are on track, we should be able to finish by the end of next year.
Thank you so
So
much.
I have 2 more phases to go.
Mr. Mayor?
I just wanted the director or deputy director to repeat that they're gonna finish early and under budget, so I think that'd be worth noting
Yes.
Yes.
for their counterparts to hear and all the other agencies, not looking at the end of the day as Mr. Director.
I mean, that's pretty complicated work, I would assume, right? Are there any other questions or concerns, Mr. Comptroller?
Well, this one's not a concern. This is exactly why we put it on non-routine, because we were concerned that people would see, change order number 31 and be concerned that this project had gone off the rails, when in fact you're actually, as the mayor pointed out, ahead of time and under budget. So that's great. We wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. So we're not expecting, well, actually, are we expecting any further extra work orders or change orders if this is hopefully going to be done next year? Will we need to do another one
Yes.
next year?
Yeah, as we receive funds, we'll issue the next
Okay,
phase.
gotcha.
And then those phases may have adds or deducts, depending on that particular phase.
And speaking on behalf of all of us who have offices in the front of City Hall, we really look forward to this being over. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Any additional questions or concerns? Hearing and seeing none at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Deputy and Mr. Director. The next item on non-routine agenda can be found on page 49, SB 2412-093, Department of General Services. This request is to approve the rejection of all bids for contract GS 16810RRR for the Mitchell Courthouse roof replacement. On behalf of DGS, we have? Oh, it was deferred?
Well, no, okay, so this is where,
Hold on one second. Ma'am,
This is Azza Rizkallah. I'm the construction contract admin from DGS. Yesterday, we were told that this item was deferred.
okay, Madam Clerk? One second, Mr. Clerk.
She doesn't know, I do.
Apologies,
Yeah,
this
it's
is
about
not on
process.
my deferral list, so someone could clarify, and that would be really helpful.
No, Mr. Comptroller, just calm down. All right.
Apparently, there has been a miscommunication because I asked yesterday afternoon when DGS told me that it had reached out to the law department, and the law department was trying to figure out what we could talk about here. I said, if you can't figure it out today, then we should defer this. But then nobody ever got back to me saying that it had been deferred. So does that mean,
She's trying to talk.
okay, so the law department does know what we.
Matthew Bradford,
Okay,
Chief of Staff.
then you're going to speak about this?
No, I was the one that confirmed the deferral. I sent an email to the
saying that-
comptroller's office.
Well, then why don't we have the deferral? Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
sir.
So this item is
Okay,
deferred.
then it is deferred
Yeah,
until the next one.
we're
Okay.
going to move on.
We will look at
thank you.
our process on that one.
The
I
next
apologize.
item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 133, SB 2412195, Law Department. The request is to approve a settlement agreement and release by Faye Cotman. On behalf of the Law Department, we have?
Matthew Bradford, Chief of Staff for the Law Department. Mr. Mayor, Council President, Comptroller, and members of the board, this request for settlement approval concerns a lawsuit filed as a putative class action against the Baltimore Police Department. It concerns BPD evidence management, including property seizure, retention, and return. There are 4 named plaintiffs, each who were victims of crime and alleged that their property was seized as part of a criminal investigation between 2018 and 2021. However, the property was not timely returned to them, and in one instance was destroyed. After the lawsuit commenced, the parties were able to negotiate a settlement that contained 2 components. First, there's a monetary component, and second, BPD is revising 2 policies related to property seized as part of investigations. The first is 703, that's death and serious assault investigations, and 1401, control of property and evidence. For policy 703, the policy revision makes clear that property must be seized pursuant to a warrant or warrant exception and properly documented. Policy 1401 has more comprehensive changes, but a few are noteworthy that I'd like to point out. The first is that there will be a training module on evidence management for BPD officers. The evidence management unit will have more resources available to it and more structure that will allow people to be able to claim their property. That includes having hours between 9 to 5 p.m. where people can collect their property. EMU will have a standing email address so that the public can reach out to them. There will be dedicated EMU staff to public inquiries, and officers will provide a receipt for property to the owner, which will provide a detailed description and list of property seized with a criminal complaint tracker number. EMU will also notify the public that if they are unable to retrieve property ripe for return, they may follow a process for a designated individual to retrieve it. A notice will be mailed to approximately 2,000 people for non-fatal shooting victims from the time period, and there will be a public notice in the newspapers for anyone whose property was seized at the time of these allegations. There are other revisions to the policy, but those are some of the highlights. These policy changes seek to balance BPD's valid need to collect evidence relevant to serious criminal investigations while balancing the right of those entitled to the property at the conclusions of those investigations. It should be noted that although our position was that the previous policies were found by the court to be constitutionally valid, these changes are in line with BPD's commitment to adopt to nationally recognized best practices. The Law Department requests that the board approve this settlement in the amount of $40,000, and I will take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chief of Staff. Could you, just for the record, communicate the nature of this case?
Sure. So there were 4 victims of shootings. After the shootings happened, the investigating officers would have property taken from the victims so that they could preserve it for part of the criminal investigation. At the conclusion of those investigations, for various reasons, and some COVID-19 closures, and others inadequate information about who the property belonged to, they were unable to retrieve the property. And as a result, they and a number of people they seek to represent filed a lawsuit against BPD related to the return of that property.
Thank you so much. And at this time, BPD has accepted the advice of the solicitor and changing of policy associated with particularly the communication of property and returning it.
That is correct.
Thank you so much. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, the board will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're calling right back up, I believe. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 134, SB 2411774, Law Department. This request is to approve a settlement agreement and release with the Baltimore City School Board of Commissioners. On behalf of the Law Department, we have
Matthew Bradford, Chief of Staff for the Law Department. We actually have the Office of Legal Counsel for Public Schools to discuss this settlement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chief of Staff.
Hi, I'm Josh Sivan. I'm the Chief Legal Officer for Baltimore City Public
Welcome to the board.
Schools.
We do not get a chance to talk to you guys often, and that is a good thing.
And I also have, absolutely, I also have Shahrazad Houghton here, who's a senior counsel in our office and handled this matter directly.
Thank you so much.
So this is a settlement arising from the City Schools Board of School Commissioners' participation in the Risk Management Fund. It arises out of an incident in July of 2019 where a student was attending the Extended School Year Services program at Pimlico Elementary Middle School. And coming back in from recess, had an interaction with a school teacher, Miss Sarah Dixon, and the student was injured arising out of that incident. Miss Dixon is no longer with the school system. That incident alleged that the student was injured, and we at City Schools take very seriously any situation of student injury. So looking at the case moving forward, worked out a settlement where Ms. Dixon contributes some, and the request is that the settlement committee and the Board of Estimates here contributes the remainder.
Thank you so much. Is it a normal practice or policy when there is a settlement like this for the responsible party to not only take ownership but be partially responsible for any compensation?
I think that's important from the perspective of Baltimore City Schools, and we talked with the law department and worked together on this, and that employee under state law is entitled to a defense and indemnification from the school system absent gross negligence. And given that situation, we thought it was important to have representatives and that former employee as part of that settlement conversation, given that, but also recognizing the limitations. So yes, in our view, that should be an important part when it's possible.
I appreciate that, and thank you for that. That was the one thing when I was reading over the material that jumped out at me. You know, on this board, I speak a lot about.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry about
Okay.
that.
And
Is everyone muted? Thank you. On this board, you know, I particularly speak about some of the work I did in Annapolis and then coming to City Hall when we look at settlements, particularly as it relates to excessive force and claims of injury. And when we settle, you know, individuals that are city employees, you know, whether it was a fireable incident such as this, their ability to take responsibility and be part of it, you know, is something that I think we have to work on. You know, I've constantly talked about, you know, the reality of we pay out millions and millions and millions of dollars in settlements, and folks still keep their pension and kind of move on with life after, you know, they've taken precious revenue away from, you know, our citizens that could go to rec centers and roads and the like. So again, when I was reading over this, it just jumped out at me that you guys took the put some of the onus on the individual that actually was responsible behind it. So I appreciate that, and thank you for kind of detailing that out for me. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Is the amount of the teacher's contribution to the settlement a public figure?
Yes, it is. So the total amount of the settlement is $171,500, and the former teacher is contributing $1,500.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. What number did you just like?
The amount that of the settlement in the settlement documents is $171,500.
I have that on my agenda as 175. We have 175.
So I don't know what's in order, but if we could make sure that the amount is as reflected in the settlement itself, which is $171,500.
Well, as long as we're approving over, we're good.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
We're perfect. Any additional questions or concerns? Hearing and seeing none at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Moved and properly second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And we hope not to see you.
We will do our best.
All right, the next item on our non-routine agenda, sorry about that, is a walk-on item. It's SB 2412394, Mayor's Office. This request is to approve an agreement with BOPA in the city of Baltimore on behalf of the city of Baltimore. I see Madam CEO, are you going to come? Madam CEO, are you going to come present for us? Or, oh, no. Mr. Deputy Mayor is going to come present.
Good morning,
You
members.
are?
Mr. President, Justin Williams, Deputy Mayor for Community and Economic Development. I'm here for Tanya Miller Hall, who has a medical appointment. She couldn't move, so I'm filling in for her.
TMI.
That's fair enough, and I'm just saying, be gentle on me. But no, but seriously, obviously, the BOPA is important to having a thriving arts and events community, which is important for economic development, so I'm here happily to present this contract to you all. And Rachel Graham, CEO of BOPA, is also here as well. The basic overall agreement, this is similar to there's been 5-year agreements in the past, going back to 2014, 2019, 2024. This one, after the, I guess, past years of tumult that are going to be fixed under Rachel Graham's leadership, we have this contract being a 1-year term as opposed to the 5-year term to give us more, I guess, oversight. We've also added a couple key terms, which I'll highlight for you. In addition to the 1-year duration, we are requesting or requiring quarterly reports from BOPA about what's happening and what they're working on. We also have stronger terms for intellectual property to ensure that we have the rights remain for Artscape and for the city's control. We are also reserving the right explicitly to remove the Arts Council designation and the Public Art Commission facilitation that they do. We don't expect any problems with Ms. Graham's leadership and the new board and the new governance model they're installing, but we want to have the protection for the city side to ensure that if there are issues in the future, we can act more swiftly. I can go into more details, but happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Are there any additional questions or concerns? Mr. Mayor?
No concerns for me. I just want to thank Rachel and her team for their deep partnership and for us getting this agreement. And Madam CEO, if you could give everybody a preview of what they're going to see on July the 4th for the fireworks, I think that would be well received as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. President, Comptroller, Director, and Madam Solicitor. So what I can tell you is we are partnering with Waterfront Partnership again this year to bring the fireworks and BSO performance to Rash Field. The part that we are specifically working on is the fireworks display that will both reflect on the past as well as the current. We will present a tasteful tribute to the collapse of the bridge. We feel like it's important to really acknowledge the contribution of the workers that were lost, as well as the role that bridge plays in our economy. We will also include a 250 drone spectacular, and it'll be a beautiful experience. We'll also take that time to actually kick off the road to Artscape with a slight reception that will be held at the Pratt Street Pavilion, which you all are invited to attend at some point. I know we have another party down the other end of the facility, but we'll be there until midnight. So if you feel like coming for an after party, please feel free to stop through.
Thank you so much, Madam CEO. Are there any other questions or concerns? Mr. Comptroller, floor is yours.
Thank you. I think this question is probably for Madam CEO, which is, have you or someone on your staff worked with our BOE team yet to make sure that there is an understanding of the calendar for when items need to be submitted for board? Because I understand the issue with this being walked on was there hadn't been a board meeting for BOPA in time to approve the contract in time to meet the regular submission deadline, and that's why it ended up being walked on.
Yes and no. So we are in the process of working through what the calendar looks like, but currently the calendar for our board meetings is out of sync, and we never would have had a regular board meeting. So our regular board meeting is actually happening right now. I'm thankful that we are moving this item and I can run back over to the office. But our last board meeting was March 26th. Our next regularly scheduled one was today. And so the only way that this lapse could have been avoided is if contract conversation had happened probably before I got here, because
or if the special board meeting had been held sooner.
Sure. I
Yeah.
mean, we received a draft contract at the end of May. And so we received a draft contract at the end of May. We had our first conversation with the mayor's office on the 12th of June, which was actually too late for it to
Ah.
have been a part of the regular agenda. And so we're all about collaboration under my leadership, and we will make sure to work with the Board of Estimates and look at the calendar, work very closely with the mayor's office as well as Senior Advisor Miller Hall to make sure that this isn't a challenge again. Personally, I'd like to start having the conversation about renegotiations tomorrow if we could, so we could avoid this happening again.
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? What I would like to say before we vote on this is we're excited for your leadership. I know I don't think I speak by myself for this board. I certainly don't speak by myself on the council. BOPA is really important, and it really tells the story of Baltimore in a way that's authentic and that provides visitors as well as residents the ability to appreciate the arts. So again, we look forward to supporting you and your leadership, and we thank you for hitting the ground running.
Thank you.
With that, at this time, I will take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably, normally the mayor doesn't move, so that says a lot too. That's been moved and probably seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item has been approved. Thank you so much, Madam CEO. You can get back to your board meeting. The next item on our routine agenda is a walk-on item. It's SB 2412279, Department of Procurement. The request is to approve renewal of VoIP, Voice over IP, software maintenance and hardware support. On behalf of procurement, we have Mr.
Adam Manny, your Chief Procurement Officer. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Mr. President, Mr. Comptroller, honorable board members. We appreciate the walk-on for this. This is for continuity of services. This is an award, this is for, let me start that again, a renewal of a previously awarded contract. It's the first renewal of 3 renewals. This is to provide software assurance, enterprise support, licenses to expand infrastructure for teleworkers for service in the Courthouse East, Courthouse West, State's Attorney's Office, Recreation and Parks, and Baltimore Police Department using the city's voice over internet protocol, VoIP. It's a 1-year renewal with an additional $250,000 added to the value of the contract, bringing the full contract value to $1,373,562.98.
Thank you. I know this exceeds your time with the city, but would you know, was this a contract that minority women participation was waived? Do you know that?
It was applicable on the original document. I don't have those numbers, though, sir, in front of me.
I would just like to raise to the board, particularly, I know we have, I don't know if hundreds, but a lot of contracts that are out there, particularly from an IT perspective, where we just kind of saw these broad stroke minority women participation waivers. Many of them have extensions that are tied to them like this. I think this has 2 after we approve today. I'd just like to call attention to the board for us to be mindful of that, not just as it relates to new contracts, but also moving forward, how we can ensure that when we do our market research analysis and there are local minority women-owned companies that can participate, that we ensure that we kind of rectify some of the issues that were present prior to this current administration.
Your timing couldn't be better, sir. Actually, just yesterday, Director Lundy's office, SMBAD, provided training to the Bureau of Procurement, the entire
Look at
team.
that. Beautiful minds think alike. Look at that. Thank you so much, Mr. Chief Procurement Officer. At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, at this time I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you so much, Mr. CPO. We're going to call you right up next. The next item in our routine is on page 231, SB 2412278, Department of Procurement on behalf of Convention Center. This request is to award revenue agreement with Eltland Electrical Exhibition Services of Maryland, LLC. On behalf of procurement, we have
Adam Manning, your Chief Procurement Officer. Thank you, Mr. President and board members. This is being walked on. This is for continuity of operations. This is a revenue-generating contract for the convention center. This was done through the full RFP process. I have the timeline if you'd like to go over. We put out the RFP to get these services done. We received 2 responses. The responses were scored on their technical merit. After the technical merit was reviewed, the price was opened. The selection committee did its work. The incumbent, Elgin, is the company that we're recommending to move forward. This will allow the contract to keep going. They'll start July 1st, and it'll go through, this is 6 years, through June 30th of 2023.
Thank you, Mr. CPO. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of this board? There being none, we enjoy revenue-generating services. At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those
Aye.
opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you so much. As we move on, this is, the next item on our routine agenda can be found on pages 299 and 300, SB 2412198, Department of Transportation. This request is to approve an award to Priority Construction Corporation for project TR 24009, ADA curb ramp and sidewalk construction. A protest was also received by J Villa Construction on behalf of the Department of Transportation. We have. Are you DOT? Are you with DOT?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, come on. I'm sorry.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Brenda Simmons, Chief of Contract Administration for Department of Transportation. The Department of Transportation recommend to award this contract to Priority Construction. Is this for TR 24009?
Yes, ma'am.
For TR 24009. Upon our review and findings, we found that Priority Construction is the responsible bidder, and we recommend awarding this contract to Priority.
Thanks so much, Madam Chief. And sir, you.
I'm Bimal Depkota. Good morning. My name is Bimal Depkota. I'm Chief of Engineering and Construction at DOT.
Yes. Anything to add to the presentation at this time, sir?
No.
No?
We
Okay.
We recommend for.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Okay, thank you so much. We're going to move on, and we might call you back up to the protester.
Okay.
J Villa Construction is, I think they're on with us virtually today. If the.
Honorable board members, this is Andrew Vance. I represent J Villa Construction. I apologize for interrupting earlier. With regard to TR 24009, J Villa Construction is the third lowest bid, and it contends that the 2 lower bid price submissions are not responsive and therefore cannot be awarded. Very briefly, ENR Services, although they're not participating here and have not submitted a bid protest, page 149 of their bid package, they missed, it came in under the MBE goal without request for waiver. And by the track materials case, 1 MSBCA paragraph 30 in 1982 case, they're automatically non-responsive. They also left 3 pages of their bid blank, pages 152, 154, and 155. Comar 21.01.02.01, paren 78 makes that a non-responsive bid. Moving on to Priority Construction, the lowest bidder. The 2 issues that we have with Priority Construction, which we believe lead to or should lead to a finding of non-responsiveness, have to do with miscalculations of bid numbers. On page 117, item 103, Priority exceeded the invitation for bids allowable mobilization charges. It's capped at 6%, and they exceeded that by approximately $13,000. on pages 149 to 151. This is the last item, and then I'll just briefly comment. 149 to 151, they miscalculated the amount of work that they were to self-perform. That's a designated item in the bid documents, and they miscalculated that amount, and then they misstated the amounts to be paid to subcontractors. The exact details are in the May 13th, 2024 bid protest letter from Mr. Villa to the clerk of the Board of Estimates. Very briefly, for the reasons I just discussed, we believe that the bid is non-responsive. It does not provide the information accurately as requested by the bid documents. That renders it non-responsive. But secondly, I want to bring the board's attention to a previous bid that J. Villa Construction participated in. It's TR 23004, Inspire School Sidewalk Reconstruction. Normally, this would be brought up only if there was a finding by the Board of Estimates that any mathematical miscalculation or exceeding mobilization charges, if the board found that those were minor irregularities. I wanted to bring the board's attention to this previous March 2024 bid procedure, wherein J. Villa Construction was informed by the Department of Transportation, again, that's TR 23004, that by virtue of their miscalculation of what they were going to self-perform, that their bid was non-responsive and non-compliant. So as a matter of basic fairness and to show the Board of Estimates how it is that the Department of Transportation, DOT, has interpreted their own bid documents, these types of miscalculations and misstatements in a bid document as to what work was going to be self-performed are grounds to find a bid to be non-responsive. So with that, I thank you very much for your time, and I ask if there are any questions. I'd be happy to answer them now or later.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vance. If you could please stay with us. The $13,000 in overage that you communicated to the board in your presentation, what percentage is that? I know it's capped at 6%, but what percentage does that drive it over?
The cap is 6%. I do not have the percentage, but I do have the actual numbers. If I can give that to you.
Yeah, you can. I'll do the
6% would have, I'm sorry?
Yeah, if you could give us the numbers real quick.
The total bid amount was $3,552,958. The amount that was submitted for mobilization was $213,000 even. That exceeds what 6% of the bid amount is. That number should have been capped at $200,397.48.
Got it.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Comptroller.
What was the actual figure they put down for mobilization?
213.
213, and the 6% cap was?
The actual, the 6% cap would be $200,397.48. The number that was submitted was $213,000 even.
Thanks so much, Mr. Vance. Again, please stay with us. Madam Director, would you like to address some of the concerns that were raised by Mr. Vance?
Yes. Thank you, Council President and Board. So as stated about the mobilization cap, the 6% is over the total bid amount. So as stated, their bid was the $3,552,958. 6% of that would have been $213,177.48. Priority's bid amount was $213,000 even. Therefore, they're within the maximum cap of 6%. So that is not a non-issue.
The board quickly figured that out as well.
Thank you. And then as far as
The board has
reference-
calculators.
Yep. And then as far as the forms, so of course this did go through the SIMBAD review. Some of the forms that Jay Villa was referencing, one of them was page 160 versus page 149. Page 160 is the subcontractor utilization form. This form is specifically used when SIMBAD processes and requests the final payment. Upon their review, that form itself does not have a bearing in the actual bid responsiveness and completeness of that. And therefore, they did go through thoroughly and determine that Priority was compliant, that was not an issue for the contract, hence why we are moving forward for the award for this contract.
Thank you, Madam Director. Mr. CPO, you have anything to add to the discussion? No, sir. All right, thank you so much. We're staying compliant. Mr. Vance, would you like to speak to, I guess, the concern associated with the cap 6% rate that the board utilized your numbers to do the math, as well as the miscalculation that the director just addressed to us? Mr. Vance? Mr. Vance, going once, going twice.
This is Jay Villa. I can.
Hello, Mr. Villa. Yeah, so if you could address, I guess you had two concerns. I believe the director just addressed both. So if you could kind of provide your feedback on that in rebuttal.
Yeah. So on the mobilization, the error was that you're supposed to calculate only the bid items. So you're supposed to subtract your mobilization, and in that calculation, it would be $3,339,958 times the 6%, which gives you the $200,397. So they miscalculated by adding the mobilization in the total. That led you to a different amount for your cap of 6%.
Yeah, I think just from past, and Mr. CPO, you can kind of, if you have any value to add here, I think from past experience, it's always based off the total value of the contract drives the cap percentage.
Right, you're not supposed to calculate the mobilization in it. That's
yeah,
the error.
I'm not sure I'm familiar with doing it that way. Mr. CPO, you have anything to add?
Sir, without seeing the actual bid documents, I wouldn't be able to.
Thank you, Mr. CPO. So, Mr. Villa, definitely hear your concern. The board understands your concern from past experience. I'm not familiar with taking the calculation, that approach. What I will say is I still think that that small difference might be immaterial as it relates to responsiveness. But if you could please address, I think the big issue that we have here is kind of the other miscalculation that I think the director was able to address to the board. Mr. Villa?
Yeah, about the self-performance.
Yes.
Like our attorney mentioned, we recently had a project that we got rejected because of the miscalculation of our percentage. And this is where we noted in our letter that Priority also has a miscalculation of representation of their actual self-performance.
Got it. Okay, anything else to add, Mr. Villa? Madam Director, do you have any response to what was just provided?
No, there's been no, under the SIMBAD review, and again, we revisited this based on the protests, that they did verify that they met the self-performance and the minority goals, so there was no issues found.
Thank you. Well, with that, I think are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Well, Mr. Villa, as well as Mr. Vance, if you're still on, thank you for joining and participating in this process. Obviously, the protest piece is critical for us as it relates to us engaging on the roles and responsibility of the Board of Estimates. And when any entity comes to us with a protest, we do take it very serious, and we would like to ensure that we have open dialogue on those particular issues. And And so again, I thank you for taking the stance and bringing this issue forward and presenting, I guess, your claims and your concerns to the board. At this time, if there aren't any additional questions or concerns, the board is ready to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you so much, Madam Director. The next item is very similar. Non-routine agenda can be found on pages 301 and 302, SB 2412096, Department of Transportation. This request is to approve an award to J Villa Construction for project TR
008.
24008, and that is also ADA curb, ramp, and sidewalk construction. A protest was received by Priority Construction, and on behalf of DOT, we have.
Director Corinne Johnson. Hello again.
Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So with this one, we had 3 bids. The first bid was from ENR Services at approximately $2.9 million, Priority at approximately $3.6, and J Villa at approximately $5.4. So for the first lowest bidder failed to complete some documents associated with the addendum, so that's where we got initial bid protest from Priority. They stated that there was a bid price issue with the mobilization, that it was over 6% as allowed per the contract. And so once we initiated that review, that's where we found that there were some other issues with the documentation where they didn't include the addendum. So therefore, that bid was thrown out. We then went to the second lowest bidder, which was Priority. Upon review of their documents by SEMBAD, they were found non-compliant. They indicated self-performance for the MBE goal, but failed to properly execute Part C, Statement of Intent to Self-Perform, and they listed themselves as self-performing 100%, but they can only count up to 50% of the dollar value of the work they will self-perform towards the applicable MBE goals. So then they were found non-compliant. We then went to the third bidder, which is now J Villa. And so they were reviewed, determined as compliant, and we're recommending them for award.
Thank you, Madam Director. Is there someone here on behalf of Priority Construction? I know the board has received a protest. Want to assure that there's no one online. We didn't get any communication prior that there would be someone joining us virtually. Is someone physically here or online for the protest from a Priority Construction perspective? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Are there any questions or concerns for members of the board to the Department of Transportation? Hearing and seeing none, at this time, I will take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you so much, Madam Director, for joining us today. We do have one additional item. That is the resolution that our amazing clerk read in at the beginning during the opening statement. Do we have a number for this? How does that work, Madam?
Not yet, sir.
Not yet. So how do we proceed?
I think we just name the resolution out loud for the record, and then when we publish the final agenda
It'll
for
come
this
with the
meeting,
final
it'll have a
number.
number assigned to it.
Okay. I guess, is anyone here on behalf of DPW to speak on behalf of the resolution? I only say that because if there are members of the general public that would like to protest or speak on behalf of this, we're going to provide them the opportunity to do so. So would DPW like to speak on behalf of this at this time? I guess the resolution kind of speaks for itself. On behalf of protest or community concern, Mr. Robert DeShiel, would you like to speak on behalf there?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. I really just want to say thank you because this was a needed modification. Matt Garback and I worked very hard for many months to get this resolution in place. And I'm not going to take a lot of time, but I want you to understand how important this really is, not just to the contractors that I represent and the others, but the system works in Baltimore City because of the trust and the confidence that one party has in the other about the good faith negotiations. And this is a sign and a symbol to my clients and the others that the city will operate in good faith. And that is absolutely critical because without it, the change order process, most of the time, the work's done before the change orders ever gets approved anyway. And without the trust that the city would treat the contractors fairly, there would be a hidden cost that you could never recover. So on behalf of Monumental Paving, who's here, and the several other clients that I have, and the others that are in the queue, thank you.
Well, Mr. DeShiel, it's not often that you come and present into this point and thank the city or us for anything.
note this.
So we should. If there's a special way that we could note this, Madam Clerk,
Note it.
to ensure. No, but thank you so much. Hey, you have a job, but when things are done right, we appreciate when folks come and communicate that, particularly on the record. So we appreciate your advocacy, but more importantly, your participation in this civic process. So with that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to point out the fact that Mr. DeShields was here and happy, so I'm glad you did that for all of us. But I really want to say thank you, because we know a lot of times when folks have a protest and we get into agreement that is beneficial to them and that they agree with, they don't often show up to say on the record that they've been working in partnership. So I just want to say thank you, as always, in working in deep partnership to make sure that the city and the businesses that we rely on and that we want to help succeed in this city are working well together. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And with that, we're still going to vote this out, Madam Clerk, right? We still should.
Yes.
Vote it out. Okay, yeah. So we don't have a.
Mr. President?
I just wanted to briefly introduce myself. I'm Patrick Mahoney with Monumental Paving, and honorable members of the board. I just want to reiterate what Mr. DeShiel just said. This means a heck of a lot to us, to other contractors like us, and more importantly, to our subcontractors. So thank you for introducing the resolution to begin with. Thank you for honoring the resolution. And thank you for working in good faith with all the partners of Baltimore City. Thank you.
Tell your father we send our best regard.
I will.
Thank you so much. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution. The mayor has moved again today.
Second.
It's been moved and probably seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. There's one small business before we move on. There was an error on my behalf earlier. And Madam Clerk, that's with SB 24-11940. We included that in the routine agenda. It's the DHCD real property disposition fixed pricing. I would like to be marked as a no vote on that.
Would you repeat that number for me, please?
Yes, Madam Clerk, it's SB 24-11940. That's Department of Housing Community Development, real property disposition fixed pricing.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, with that, since we're pulling that out, we're just noting that as a no vote. I think just for procedural purposes, I'm going to ask for a motion for us to approve the amended opening statement so we can move on. So if we can have a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved. The mayor's the third one. Boom. If we have a motion and probably second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item carries. At this time, there's no new business before the desk of the board. We will adjourn. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Estimates will occur on Wednesday, July 10th at 9 a.m. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, we absolutely love you.
My fascination. Here we are. Thanks, TV 25. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of we had some visitors, a student tour, and we're just getting ourselves completely situated to begin the bid opening. I'm going to start with addenda as always. So thank you, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Estimates bid opening for June 26, 2024. I have two addenda to share this morning. One for the Department of Recreation and Parks, RP 23802, BOCEK gym additions. The new opening date for this bid will be July 10th, 2024. And also for Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 000570, retro commissioning study for a large building. I don't know why it's funny to me that it's not non-specific, but retro commissioning study for a large building. The new opening date is July 10th, 2024. So those, again, are some changes to current bid opening dates. RP 23802 and RFQ 00050. Both will now be opened on July 10th, 2024. If you missed any of those details, this of course gets posted along with all the opening results for today on the comptroller's website by close of business, but often much earlier. So we have 13 bids to open today. And we are going to start with a bid for the Department of Recreation and Parks. This is RP 22801, Clifton Mansion Restroom Improvement.
So we have one bidder, that is A.L. Ingram Construction. Just look at this. Okay. This one. Okay, so we have a bid bond, for this, and I believe there's a total down here. But I can read it out, but do you want to look at it first?
Where's the copy?
It's a bit of a
Oh,
conflict.
is there an original and a? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna need the copies over here then. Go ahead, Abby.
So the original does not have a total listed, but
Oh.
that copy seems to have a total listed at the bottom.
Yes, it does.
It's just not specific. Yeah.
Okay, I am going to share the total, and then we're going to refer this to the agency for further review.
Okay.
Since the agency is not present today. So the bid amount I'm seeing is the 111030?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and read yours. I'll read back like we always do and verify against this copy. Oh, you can't see it.
Yeah, I can't see it.
Sorry, okay.
That's okay.
So just to explain to folks what's happening, we have an original and one copy, and the copy is showing a total, but Abby, who's looking at the original, does not see the total. So we are going to share the total presented in the copy, and maybe we will go ahead and refer this one to law, folks, before we refer it to the agency. I don't know if this usually doesn't end up presenting a problem, but it will be a little odd because normally Abby would be giving me the total and I would be verifying that. But in this case, the total on the copy received is $111,030.00. So that number is 111,030.00. And again, that was a single bidder for A.L. Ingram Construction. The bid amount is $111,030.00, and there was a bid bond presented. I don't believe there's a check, though, correct? Okay, and we have an original and one copy, and I'm noting that for the team because we'll have to make a copy of the copy so that we can keep one on record in our office here. And Shay, I'm gonna move, actually, Abby, can I give you the stack back and start at that end and just stack them in sequence? That way they'll stay in sequence for Shay. Great, thank you. So up next, also for the Department of Recreation and Parks, we have RP 22806. This is for Patterson Boat Lake renovations. My sheet indicates potentially no bids for this one.
Two and 12.
Bear with us, folks. We're just verifying that we have no bidders for this item to be
Thank
double
you.
sure. So.
So two.
Yes.
It's 12.
No bids?
No bids.
So, asking the team a question whilst we're at it. We verified that there was no change to the opening date as far as we know? Okay. Folks, we have no bid received for RP 22806. This was for the Department of Recreation and Parks for Patterson Boat Lake renovations. No bids submitted. Up next for Department of Recreation and Parks, we have RP 23885. This is for Federal Hill East slope repairs.
Okay, all right. Up first, we have Allied Contractors, Inc. We have a bid bond, and that total is 588, 500.00.
Okay, may I have a copy, please? Thanks, Tawanda. That number is 588,500.00.
That is correct.
And you confirm we do have a bid bond, but we don't have a check, correct?
Correct,
No checks
yeah.
to note. Okay, great. Okay, that bidder was Allied Contractors, Inc. for $588,500.00. And that was an original one copy.
Thank you. Up next, we have Triangle Contracting, LLC. That total is 454,485.00. And we have a bid bond.
Thank you. And that number confirming on the copy is 454,485.00.
That is correct.
That was Triangle Contracting LLC for $454,485.00. And there's the duplicate. Is this the one we just finished?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Let's not give that one back to me. We're just stacking them up in sequence for you.
All right. Up next, we have Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc.
Copy.
That total is 460,000.00.
And there is a bid bond?
Yes, there is.
Okay, that number was 460,000.00.
Oh, yes, that is correct.
That's it. Just making sure. That bidder was Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc. for $460,000.00. Oh, great. And now Shay will start taking the copies.
Okay. All right, our final bidder is P. Flanagan and Sons, Inc. That total is 497.53, let me say that again, 497,537.00.
And yes to a bid bond?
Yes, there's a bid bond.
Okay, that number was 497,537.00.
That is correct.
Okay. That was P. Flanagan and Sons, Inc. for $497,537.00. and 0 cents. And I believe that was the final of 4 bidders for RP 23885 Federal Hill East Slope Repairs. Up next, for Department of Public Works, we have SC 938R, Headworks Facilities Improvements at the Patapsco Wastewater Treatment Plant.
Yes. So up first, we have American Contracting and Environmental Services, Inc. That total is 36,978,000.00.
I am guessing there's a bid bond for this one. Any checks?
No checks.
Thank you, just making sure. Yes, trying to be good about noting that on the form. American Contracting and Environmental Services, I have that number as 36,978,000.00.
That is correct.
That was American Contracting and Environmental Services, Inc. Again, sorry about the repetition there. $36,978,000.00.
Our second and final bidder is Ullman Chute Construction, LLC. That total is 39,800,000.00.
And we have a bid bond?
Yes, we have a bid bond.
That number was 39,800,000.00.
That is correct.
That was Ullman Shooty Construction LLC for $39,800,000.00. And that was our final of 2.
Yes.
Bidders for SC 938R, Headworks Facilities Improvements at the Patapsco Wastewater Treatment Plant. Up next, we have Department of Public Works, SC 1006, Jones Falls Sewer Shed Inflow and Infiltration Reduction for Area A.
Up first, we have Inliner Solutions, LLC. That total is 35,226,622.62.
Okay, that number was 35,226,622.62.
That is correct.
And we have a bid bond?
Yes, we do.
And no checks, correct?
No checks.
Okay. That bidder was Inliner Solutions LLC for $35,226,622.62.
Our second and final bidder is Spinello. And that total is 33,573,300.00. And we do have a bid bond.
Thank you. That number was 33,573,300.00.
That is correct.
The bidder was Spinello for $33,573,300.00. And that was our final of 2 bidders. For SC 1006, Jones Falls Sewer Shed Inflow and Infiltration Reduction, Area A. Up next, for the Department of Public Works, we have SC 1039, Urgent Needs Improvements to Baltimore City Sanitary Sewers in various locations, Zone 3.
Up first, we have Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc. That total is 10,484,646.50.
Okay, that number was 10,484,646.50.
That is correct.
And do we have a bid bond?
Yes, we do.
That was Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc. for $10,484,646.50.
Right, and our second and final bidder is Spinello. That total is 9,733,000.00. And we have a bid bond.
Thank you. That number was 9,733,000.00.
That is correct.
And that bid was from Spinello for $9,733,000.00. And that was our final of two for SC 1039, Urgent Needs Improvements to Baltimore City Sanitary Sewers in various locations, Zone 3. Next, for Department of General Services, we have GS 23808, Eastern Police District Roof Replacement and Partial Interior Renovations.
Up first, we have WM Schlosser Company, Inc. So that total is 3,366,000.00. And there is a bid bond.
Thank you. That number was 3,366,000.00.
That is correct.
That was WM Schlosser Company, Inc. for $3,366,000.00.
Our second and final bidder is Triunfo Builders, Inc. And that total is 2,321,239.00.
That's Triunfo, right? Okay.
Triunfo.
That number was 2,321,239.00.
That is correct.
That was Triunfo Builders, Inc. for $2,321,239.00. And that was our second of two bidders for GS 23808, Eastern Police District Roof Replacement and Partial Interior Renovations. Up next, for the Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 000232, Personal Computer Hardware and Related Items, Part A. When I see Part A, I think it means we're just reading the names of the technical proposers and not sharing any bid amounts because we were not asked to open a Part B. Correct. Okay, awesome. So we will be, Abby will run through the names one by one, and then I'll repeat the whole list at the end of the reading.
All right. Up first, we have Dolly Computers. Next, we have Insight Public Sector, Inc. Up next, we have Applied Technologies Services, Inc. Up next, we have SHI International Corporation. Up next, we have ALX Tel Inc.
Okay, I might, can you spell that one out?
Sure.
ALXTEC?
ALXTEL, comma, Inc.
Okay. And is it ALX, capital ALX, capital TEL?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And our final bidder is HCGI Hartford.
So that was 6 bidders.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to run through the list of those who have submitted technical proposals, and they are as follows. Daily Computers, I'm not sure if it's Daily or Dolly, DALY Computers, Insight Public Sector, Inc., Applied Technology Services, Inc., SHI International Corp., ALXTEL, Axel Tel, Inc., and HCGI Hartford. Those were the 6 technical proposals received for RFQ 000232, personal computer hardware and related items. Ready for up next? For Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 000577, batteries for automotives, equipment, and machinery. Is this a total or itemized? Okay.
The best battery. Up first, we have the Best Battery Company Incorporated.
That's just my laptop, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, this one.
They're all formatted the same way.
Okay, so it looks like we have totals to share. Okay.
So that total is 117,650.00.
Okay, that total was 117,650.00.
That is correct.
That was the Best Battery Company, Inc. for $117,650.00.
Thanks. Up next, we have Elliott Auto Supply Company, Inc., doing business as Factory Motor Parts. And that total is 35,000.00.
That number was 35,000.00.
That is correct.
That was Elliott Auto Supply Company, Inc., doing business as Factory Motor Parts for $35,000.00.
Our third and final bidder is Parts Authority LLC, and that total is 120,000.00.
That number was 120,000.00.
That is correct.
Pardon me. That was Parts Authority LLC for $120,000.00. Up next, for the Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 000550, chemical route application for sanitary sewer systems.
We have one bidder. That is Duke's Root Control, Inc. And that total is 8,606,176.00.
That number was 8,606,176.00.
That is correct.
Does this by any chance have a bid bond or anything? Okay.
I don't see a bid
I don't
bond.
think it would, but
No.
just in case. Okay, that was the only bidder also, correct?
Correct.
So that was our only bid for RFQ 000550, and that was Duke's Root Control, Inc. for $8,606,176.00, chemical root application for sanitary sewer systems. Up next, we have for the Bureau of Procurement RFQ 000578, uniforms.
Up first, we have Municipal Emergency Services, Inc.
And do these have totals?
Yes. The total is 747,179.49.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the last two?
.49.
49. Okay, that was 747,179.49.
That is correct.
Okay, that was Municipal Emergency Services, Inc. for $747,179.49.
So that one we're gonna separate in order for her to, because the total is put separately. So if you just, yeah. Because that's the total, and then the actual rest of the information is in the other half of that.
Oh,
It came in two different parts for all of them.
gotcha. Okay. Right. Our second and final bidder is Chesapeake Uniform Rental, Inc. And that total is 589,678.95.
That number was 589,678.95.
That is correct.
That was Chesapeake Uniform Rental Incorporated for $589,678.95. And that was our second of two bidders for RFQ 000578 uniforms. Up next, we have also for the Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 000594, OEM Parts and Service for New Holland.
We have no bids submitted.
And we have no bids submitted for RFQ 000594, OEM Parts and Service for New Holland. And I think we have one more bid, yes? For Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 000557, electrical supplies.
This was the one that had to be.
Oh, this is one, okay. Yeah, so, was that last cycle?
Yes.
Last cycle, we tried to open bids and didn't get any for RFQ 557, and that is because there was an addenda issued changing the opening date until today. So if that number sounds familiar to you, that's why, and we are actually opening the bid today. So that's RFQ 557 for electrical supplies. Go ahead, Ab.
We have one bidder, Production Distribution Companies. And that total is 151,000.00.
Okay, that number was 151,000.00.
That is correct.
That was for Production Distribution Companies, $151,000.00. And that was our only bidder for RFQ 000557, electrical supplies. And I think that brings us to a close today. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Our next bid opening is on July 10th, 2024 at 12 noon. Thanks very much for watching. And bid results will be posted by close of business today, if not, in fact, sooner. You can find them on the Comptroller's website, as always. Thank you. Thanks, TV 25.